In December 2021, the name Harmony Montgomery first hit headlines across the United States of America when a missing persons investigation was launched to find the 7-year-old girl. Since then, her father and stepmother have both been arrested and charged. A home where she used to live in Manchester, New Hampshire, has been searched for days on end, and the reward for information leading to her discovery has topped $140,000. But here's the strange thing. Before all of this, nobody seems to have set eyes on Harmony for more than 2 years. So, who is Harmony Montgomery? Why did it take so long for anyone to notice that this little girl has gone missing? Where has she been at all this time? And is it now too late to save her life? Hi, and welcome to Mysterious 7. I'm Michael, and today I want to take you guys through the story of little Harmony Montgomery, who dropped off the face of the earth back in 2019. Little Harmony wasn't born under a lucky star. Both her parents have a problematic history of substance abuse, and she had to cope with a visual disability in one eye through all of that. Her mother, Crystal Sorey, a resident of Massachusetts, lost custody due to addiction problems when her daughter was just about 4 years old. Sorey had to surrender Harmony to the state in the summer of 2018. After that, the girl's father, Adam Montgomery, secured sole custody in February 2019 and moved her to New Hampshire. Harmony was living with her father, Adam, as well as his wife, Kayla Montgomery, and their children at the property at the time when she went missing. The little girl had been in and out of foster care for much of her life, according to her files. Sometimes kids do get caught up in the legal system for years at a time. But Harmony wasn't one of the kids who slipped through the cracks of the foster care system. She went missing from her own father's house, and he never reported the matter, nor tried to reach out for help, nor find his daughter. So what exactly is his involvement in the disappearance of his child? Police said they first became aware of the case when they received a call from the girl's mother, Crystal Sorey, in November 2021. She had been trying to locate her daughter for months, but said she had been blocked by her ex-husband from contacting her. She said she last saw her daughter during a FaceTime video call with Adam Montgomery around Easter 2019. Sorey told the police that, since then, she unsuccessfully made attempts to find Harmony by contacting various schools and driving by addresses associated with Adam Montgomery. She said last year, he and his partner Kayla blocked all communication with her. According to news reports, Sorey had been sharing concerns over Harmony's well-being with Blair and Jonathan Miller, a couple who fostered and eventually adopted Harmony's younger brother Jameson in June 2019. The two were also actively trying to make a connection with Harmony and told Sorey multiple times they'd adopt her if the need arose. Harmony spent a lot of time in foster care with her younger biological brother Jameson. It seems that the couple, who said they repeatedly told Harmony's mother that they were willing to adopt the girl if need be, was very much interested in the hunt for the missing child. The couple actively tried to make contact with Harmony throughout the past 2 years, as they said Jameson missed her and that he'd cry at night for her. The couple said they weren't ever able to speak with Harmony and kept in touch with Sorey about her attempts to open a line of communication with the girl's father. On November 18, 2021, Sorey reported Harmony missing to the Manchester Police Department. Sorey made her first public appearance at the Candlelight Vigil on January 8th after authorities searched the last known residence of her daughter. "I just don't feel that in my heart," Sorey told reporters at the time. "Like, I don't feel like I lost her. And a mother knows. A mother knows if your baby's here or not. I know she's here." She had had this message for her daughter. "Hi, baby. If you can see me and hear me, I want you to know that I never stopped looking for you, and I won't stop fighting until I find you, okay? You stay strong, and Mommy's right here fighting for you. I love you." Now, this is where the timeline of events starts to get confusing, and that's typically the point in any investigation when you know someone has been lying. Mrs. Sorey told police she had not been able to contact her daughter since they spoke on a video call in April 2019. After that, she said, Montgomery cut off all contact between her and her daughter. But Montgomery claimed to investigators he last saw his daughter around Thanksgiving 2019, claiming that Mrs. Sorey had picked up her from Manchester to take her to live with her. The criminal complaint says that Montgomery claimed to believe his daughter was living with his ex and did not show much emotion or reaction when officers said they were concerned whether Harmony was alive when they contacted him in December. His story was also contradicted by Kayla Montgomery's account, who said she last saw Harmony the day after Thanksgiving, when her husband said he was driving her to see Mrs. Sorey. And in some additional testimony, Adam Montgomery's uncle, Kevin Montgomery, told investigators that he had not seen Harmony or his nephew since late 2019, when she was 5 years old. Police interviews with other family members revealed Montgomery was allegedly abusive toward his daughter, including giving her a black eye, forcing her to clean the toilet with her toothbrush, and making her stand in a corner for hours as punishment. Montgomery's brother Michael Montgomery told investigators he had concerns that Adam was physically abusive to the child and was super short with her. Kevin Montgomery said he noticed Harmony had a black eye in July 2019, which his nephew confessed to causing by hitting her in the face, according to the criminal complaint. "I bashed her around this house," he said his nephew told him. Kevin said he contacted DCYF at that time, and he also noticed that his nephew subjected Harmony to other forms of abusive discipline, including scrubbing a toilet with her toothbrush and her being spanked hard on the butt. A neighbor said that it was a bad situation at the property, describing lots of people living there at different times, adults seen arguing in the street, junk left piled up in the yard, and the electricity is switched off at one point. The electricity was turned off and they ran the generator all summer with the wiring running through the window. The neighbor said the Montgomerys were basically squatting at the home when it had fallen into foreclosure, and Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery were refusing to leave. "We didn't intermingle with them as it was a bad situation," she said. "There were lots of different people living there, piles of junk in the driveway, junk outside." She said she went away for the Thanksgiving holidays in 2019 and returned to find the family had finally packed up and moved out. And another neighbor on the street where Harmony lived also says that the family moved on Thanksgiving 2019, the same time Adam Montgomery says he last saw the missing child. Manchester police said definitively that Harmony has not been seen since around October or November 2019, when she was 5 years old, yet a missing persons investigation was only launched in December 2021. Mrs. Sorey has gone on public record to state that her daughter was failed by everybody. Despite multiple efforts to reach out to her daughter, or at least find out more, no authorities concerned paid attention, and the girl's father clearly couldn't care less what happened to the child. The last confirmed sighting of Harmony by law enforcement was on the 11th of September 2019, when Manchester police officers were called to the home on 77 Guildford Street in Manchester, where she lived. Police Chief Aldenburg, who is in charge of the case now, previously said the last police call-up to the property was in October 2019, but confirmed he had muddled the dates in a press briefing on the 12th of January. Despite the date change, the police chief said investigators are still working on the belief that Harmony was last seen in October or November of that year. Harmony's father and his wife were both arrested and charged on counts related to the missing child in early January. Adam Montgomery was arrested on the 4th of January and charged with second-degree felony assault, 2 misdemeanor counts of endangering the welfare of a child, and 1 misdemeanor count of interference with custody. On the assault charge, he is accused of striking Harmony in the face sometime in July 2019, giving her a black eye, according to the criminal complaint. Officials said Montgomery is not cooperating with the investigation into his daughter's disappearance, and he has refused to say where she is. The day after her husband's arrest, Kayla Montgomery was also arrested on 1 felony charge of welfare fraud for allegedly fraudulently collecting welfare benefits for the missing children between December 2019 and June 2021. Mrs. Montgomery, who has 3 children with her husband, is accused of obtaining $1,500 in food stamp benefits meant for Harmony between December 2019 and June 2021, even though the girl was not living with them. Prosecutors have now dropped that welfare fraud charge and added 3 new charges, 1 count of theft by deception and 2 misdemeanor charges of welfare fraud. The charges accuse Mrs. Montgomery of making intentionally false statements about her stepdaughter's whereabouts in February and March 2021 to claim benefits. After the police investigation into the case amped up, several disturbing details about Harmony's father came to light. Adam Montgomery has a history of violence and a long criminal record, including convictions for shooting a man in the head in a drug deal just 6 months before Harmony was born. He was also convicted in 2010 for attacking 2 women at gunpoint. It has emerged that Montgomery is a suspect in the cold case murder of a 28-year-old man in Lynn, New Hampshire, back in February 2008. Darlin Guzman was found shot in the chest in the parking lot of the former White Hen convenience store in Lynn's Austin Square on the night of the 10th of February 2008. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. A source in Boston law enforcement told reporters that Montgomery, who was 18 at the time, and 2 members of his family, who were not named, had been the focus of the murder investigation since day 1. The 3 family members had been in contact with the victim earlier that day and planned to meet with him at the convenience store before the meeting culminated in gunfire, according to the source. The victim's car was later found abandoned in the direction of Bedford, New Hampshire, where Montgomery lived at the time. No one has ever been charged with Mr. Guzman's murder, but the source said Montgomery remains the focus of the investigation to this day. Almost 14 years on from that killing, Adam Montgomery and his wife are now charged on counts related to his missing daughter. However, while charged with serious offenses including child abuse and welfare fraud, no charges have been brought against anyone directly in connection to Harmony's disappearance. So why was Harmony not reported missing for 2 years? Mrs. Sorey has accused the authorities of failing her daughter. She said she made multiple attempts to report concerns to child services. After November 18th, when she contacted Manchester police saying she believed her daughter was missing, someone finally paid attention. Police officers contacted the New Hampshire Division for Children, Youth, and Families, or DCYF, about the location of the missing child. Then, on the 27th of December, the DCYF reported that it was also unable to locate Harmony. Manchester police announced a search was launched on the 31st of December. Emails sent by Mrs. Sorey to the Manchester mayor's office, begging for help in finding her daughter, have also now come out. "Please, I'm begging for help in finding my daughter," she wrote on the 29th of December. In her emails, Mrs. Sorey said Adam Montgomery had never enrolled their daughter in school and that she has missed important doctor's appointments she's had since a baby due to a disability in her eye. The emails were sent just 2 days before police finally reported Harmony missing. As well as the repeated attempts to raise the alarm, the family was well known to child services. Newly released records released on the 12th of January have emerged showing that police officers were called to the Guilford Street home at least 10 times between February 2019, when Montgomery got custody of Harmony, and when she was last seen in the fall. Reports ranged from claims of domestic disturbances to animal welfare and concerns about the living conditions in the home. The DCYF was notified about some of the incidents. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu announced on the 12th of January that the DCYF is carrying out an internal review of its handling of Harmony's case. However, the governor defended the state's work, saying, "As soon as we found out that this child may not have been showing up for school for quite some time, it was reported up to us. The team got right on it. It wasn't a delay. It didn't sit in a file on somebody's desk." An independent investigation is also being carried out by the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate after Harmony was moved from Massachusetts into the custody of her father in New Hampshire in February 2019. Now officials in New Hampshire and Massachusetts are passing the blame between each other. The New Hampshire governor sent a letter to Massachusetts court officials slamming a judge for placing Harmony in the care of her monster father, giving his violent past and long rap sheet. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker responded to the criticism by saying he felt his pain, but said he wants to wait and see the results of the independent review by the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate. Investigators have revealed very few details about what they think may have happened to Harmony. The Guilford Street property has been a focus of much of the search, with investigators seen in the home and the backyard for multiple days. However, Manchester police said the search had concluded there. It is not clear if anything of interest was uncovered, and no other locations for searches have been identified. Chief Aldenburg insisted on the 12th of January, but they are still working on the belief that Harmony is alive. However, he admitted that he was a little discouraged by the case so far and pleaded with the public to come forward with information. He added, "Somebody out there knows something." Despite the national attention and the painstaking efforts to find the missing child, investigators appear to have made very little headway. Though concerning, the lack of progress is perhaps unsurprising, as whoever has information about what happened to the little girl has had a more than a 2-year head start on the investigators. On the 14th of June 2022, law enforcement officials were seen transporting a refrigerator and taking potential pieces of evidence from the scene at a Manchester home where Harmony Montgomery's father and stepmother, Adam and Kayla, once lived. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer stated that bringing in the refrigerator is usually used to maintain biological evidence. If they found a body or body parts in a freeze, law enforcement would want to maintain the level of decomposition, Coffindaffer said. "I have a really creepy feeling about this. It's not good." Several law enforcement agencies were seen outside the Union Street apartment complex, where investigators were focused on the second-floor unit, where Montgomery's father, Adam Montgomery, and his now estranged wife, Kayla, once lived. A woman called Darcy Hambleton, who lives behind the apartment complex, told a reporter that she briefly saw police enter the building on Monday, and it seemed casual. But by 9 a.m. Tuesday, Hambleton said she saw a full-scale investigation from her balcony, which included 6 to 7 officers behind the building at any given time. She added that she saw an individual in an FBI t-shirt and one man in a hazmat suit, and noted that the front of the complex is a media circus. Investigators were later seen taking a refrigerator wrapped in biohazard tape from the apartment and loading it into a truck. A camera was also used to search the sewer in front of the building. "I knew about the case since 2021 when Harmony was initially reported missing. It's all over Manchester on signs and billboards," Hambleton said. "But I had no idea that her father had lived behind me." Noting that she has a 7-year-old daughter herself, Hambleton added that her heart is in my stomach right now, thinking that something could have happened to that little girl here. After this raid, Crystal Sorey stated publicly, "I know in my heart this is no longer a rescue mission. They're looking for a body." In a disturbing follow-up, Kelsey Small, one-time girlfriend of the father of missing Harmony Montgomery, was recently found dead in Manchester, police said. Small, 27, was with Adam Montgomery when police found the homeless couple sleeping in a car on December 31, 2021, in the early days of the search for Harmony. The cause of death is still pending, but it does not appear suspicious, said police spokeswoman Heather Hamill. According to court records, police were on their 4th day of searching for Harmony when they found Adam Montgomery and Small sleeping in a car on New Year's Eve. The car was parked on Harvell Street on the west side, close to the Gifford Street home where the Montgomery family had lived 2 years earlier. Small told police she had been romantically involved with Adam Montgomery for more than a year. She knew he had 4 children from previous relationships, but he was not in touch with any of them and never talked about Harmony, she told police. She had no idea where Harmony might be. Police eventually arrested Adam Montgomery, but never charged Small with any crime. So what happened to Harmony Montgomery? And where is she now? If her father is innocent, why did he never report her disappearance? And when her mother, Crystal, tried to find her daughter, why weren't police and the local child protective services on her side? As this case unfolds, we hope that Harmony's mother finds the justice she deserves, whether her daughter is dead or living. Police have stated that Harmony is 8, and she should be wearing glasses due to her blindness in one eye. It's a heartbreaking story, and we hope with everything we've got that somehow, against all odds, Harmony Montgomery might still be found alive. Corpus Christi resident Kevin Davis strangled his mother before hitting her in the head with a hammer, splitting her skull. Davis then swirled her brain around before sexually assaulting her corpse. Davis was sentenced to life in prison for the crime of a mom who he described as the best. In 2014, Kevin Jazrell Davis argued with his mother, 50-year-old Kimberly Hill, in the Corpus Christi, TX, apartment he shared with her and his sister, Destiny. On May 26th, Davis called 911, reporting that he'd just murdered his mother. Once at the police station, then 18-year-old Davis vividly detailed the day's events, sometimes with a smirk on his face. What he told detectives was gruesome and shocking. Kevin admitted bashing in Hill's head with a hammer, swirling her brain around, and then sexually assaulting her corpse. On the morning of March 27, 2014, Davis, bored and frustrated with life, told his mother he did not like people and that he wanted to commit suicide. Obviously caught off guard by the statement, Hill allegedly told her son that she could not stop him, that was what he wanted to do. Kevin later told police hearing this from his mother enraged him. It was then he decided to take her life. As Hill sat on the couch in the living room, Davis came up behind her, attempting to strangle her with a cord. Hill began screaming. Kevin panicked, retrieved a hammer, and began bashing in his mother's skull. Davis struck his mother in the head with the hammer at least 20 times, splitting her skull in the process. Davis then retrieved a kitchen knife that he inserted inside his mother's head wound. He swirled her brain around to make sure she was dead, Kevin claimed, and then inserted his hand inside the wound. He would tell detectives during a taped interrogation that his mother's brain felt like putty. Kevin then dragged his mother's lifeless body to her bedroom and raped her corpse. When he finished the sadistic act, he went to a neighbor's house, saying he just killed someone and needed help. The neighbor dialed 911. Police arrested Davis without incident. At the police station, he made a full confession of the crime, giving details that even seasoned detectives found highly disturbing. Watch part of Kevin Davis's confession. During the interrogation, Davis told detectives that he originally planned on killing his sister, too, but changed his mind. He further admitted that he often fantasized about having sex with dead bodies. With a smirk on his face, Kevin also told the detective that he was a virgin before he raped his mother. He stated, "I guess I've lost my virginity to a corpse," as he gently laughed. What did Kimberly Hill do to warrant such a violent death? Nothing warrants a son murdering and sexually assaulting his mother, of course, and Kevin could not give detectives one good reason for the crime. According to Kevin, she was a great mom that did not deserve what he had done to her. He said that she was the best mother in the world and went on to say, "I am a terrible, disgusting person." Kevin admitted that he had the best mother in the world, telling detectives that she did nothing to deserve what was done to her. He went on to say that he was a terrible, disgusting person. In reality, Kevin was a serial killer in the making, a psychopath who took sadistic pleasure in hurting other people. Although diagnosed by a psychologist with antisocial personality disorder, the doctor said he knew right from wrong when he brutally murdered and raped his mother. He readily admitted that he would kill again if ever released from prison. He also confessed to then fleeing the crime scene on his bicycle. Before he did that, though, he left several handwritten notes for the police, one of which read, "Chase me. Sorry for the mess. KD." But after a while, he decided against leaving town and called 911 to report his mother's killing and his crimes. Despite admitting to the murder and making a videotaped confession, Kevin Davis pleaded not guilty to the charges in court. He later changed the plea. Davis smiled at the jury as they sentenced him to life in prison. He serves his time at the Jester 4 facility in Richmond, Texas, and is eligible for parole in March 2044. Story number 2. Story of the Killer Priest. We will be exploring the story of a killer. A priest that seemed to be normal, nothing strange or nothing weird about him, however, he did have a dark side. It turns out that not only was he a pervert, but he was manipulating people as he saw fit, especially women. And now, without further ado, let's dive into the story of Guy Gay Neuer. We're going back in time in the 50s in France, and we need to take note that the church at that time had a very important place in people's lives, especially in the countryside. The priests were almost as important as the mayors because they were representing a type of moral authority that many people listened to, and this was the case in the small village of Europe where this story took place. A town that had about 400 villagers. Guy Neuer was born on the countryside, and his family was very Catholic. They raised him so that he can have a career in religion as a priest, and even if that was not his first choice, that is exactly what he became. It is in 1950 that Guy became a priest at the Church of Europe. In appearance, this young man looked like the ideal priest. He was nice, friendly, kind, and very dynamic. Anything linked to religion, he did it very, very well. He had a lot of great ideas to help the village grow. He created a choir, a group to play in a theater piece. He gave organized multiple excursions for the kids, and he was known to have created a soccer team for the boys of the village. The older people thought that it was very modern for him to bring all these items to the village, and the younger generation thought it was pretty amazing and appreciated the modern aspect that he brought to the town and to the religion. Neuer was apparently also a beautiful man, and the ladies found him very charming. Now, as I have mentioned at the beginning, underneath this whole angelic disguise, God was actually hiding a dark secret, his personality. He had a thirst for carnal pleasure, and he was using his charm to get closer to the ladies. After a lot of perversity and manipulation, a lot of the women actually gave in, and none of the women spoke as they were afraid that no one would believe them and did not want to be seen as the shame of the village. It is in 1953 that things took a different turn for Guy Neuer. An incident happened that changed the plan of the priest. A 16-year-old girl fell for his charm, and guess what happened? She became pregnant. Now, of course, the priest denies everything, and he says that he is not the father. He threatens the girl and says that if she does not stop, he will file a complaint for defamation. Now, having a high influence in the village, Guy says that this is nonsense and it is impossible for him to be the father, and of course, having such an high influence, his followers believed him. He was even summoned in front of his superior, the bishop, to which he lied to you and denied the whole thing, and of course, this whole situation was shut down. In reality, he was actually the father, and he actually took the girl to another village to give birth, where he convinced her to give away the child, and of course that story was never heard of or told to the villagers, or we could say, maybe presume, that if people knew, they decided not to say anything because the priest had such a high influence on the villagers that they did not want to go against him. Once the story died, Guy went back to his normal ways and kept manipulating the people like he did before, but there was another incident in 1956. Regine Faze, 19 years of age, got pregnant, and again by Guy Neuer. Contrary to the other women, Regine did not want to give away her child for adoption. Not only that, but she wanted to raise him in the village of the Europe where the priest was. Guy was terrified, and he was afraid that eventually the child would grow up and resemble him. He was also afraid that this woman would actually speak eventually. Speaking of which, in 1956 rumors started to make surface. A lot of parishioners were becoming pregnant in mysterious ways, and no one knew who the father was. The priest then starts to think about a plan and ask a military man from another village to come to town and pretend that he was the father. Unfortunately, that strategy did not work out, and no one believed the soldier was the father. That only made things worse for the mysterious pregnancies. December 3rd, 1956 is a date that changed everything for the priest. Guy brings Regine in a deserted road to try and convince her one more time to give up the child. She refuses again, and she was tired of the priest's requests, so you know what she did? She got out of the car and started to walk back the opposite way back to the village. At night, Guy Neuer got out of the car and pulled out a 6.35 caliber pistol and fired 3 shots. The 3 shot hit Regine in the back of the neck, then she died on the spot. Once the crime committed, the priest walked to the victim, undressed her, and took out a knife and started to open Regine's stomach. From her stomach, he removed the baby girl that was still alive. The priest committed again an act that cannot be forgiven. He strangled the baby, stabbed it, disfigured it, and he did all the thinking to himself that, if the baby is massacred that way, there would be no way, no DNA, if you want to call it that way, no DNA to trace the baby back to him. The disappearance of Regine was actually reported in the evening, and the weird part is that the priest joined the search party to find Regine. Can you imagine that situation? I mean, the killer is with you in the search party trying to find the person that he just murdered. Is it just me or that is just like twisted? The body was found very quickly, and because the priest was not an assassin, he didn't, think about cleaning up the crime scene, so it didn't take long for the cops to find the murder weapon, and they found the weapon casing that linked back to the priest. So the priest is now a suspect, and when asked during the interrogation, the priest denied everything. However, because of all the pressure he was getting, he just cracked and admitted everything. Now that story came out and everyone was devastated in France because he is now a criminal, and the church asked for Guy to be locked up with a false name so that it would not affect the church, and also the main reason was to make sure that the crime was not associated to the church. The court addressed the case of Guy Desnoyers on January 24, 1958. Of course, the villagers and the public opinion wanted the priest to be sentenced to death. The life of Guy was defined as a person that did enjoy luxury, sexual relations, and admired his own authority, and on his side, the priest was asking forgiveness because he had no clue what he did wrong. The jury did provide their verdict, and for most, they said that he was guilty of double murder. Of course, there was Regine and the baby. However, they did not want to sentence him to death. The jury did not want to send someone associated to the church to the scaffold. The priest Guy Desnoyers was therefore sentenced to perpetrated work. Now that situation raised a lot of questions regarding the responsibility of the Catholic Church, and this is still a question that is being asked nowadays, especially for the priests who like other kids, if you know what I mean. There was an investigation that was done, and the report came out saying that the church knew the dark side that he was hiding before he was pronounced priest. His superiors noticed that he did not have a lot of faith, and he was not really a believer in Catholic religion. The investigation did show that before being priest in Europe, he was sent to Plymouth. While he was there, he did have a sexual relation with his parishioner, and instead of removing his status, they just transferred him to another city. Even there, his weakness for women did not stop, as he did have multiple sexual relations. You would think that the church would revoke his status, but instead he was just transferred to Europe, where the church was isolated and his temptations might be lower. But as we have seen, this was not the case. Desnoyers was released in 1972. After being detained for 22 years, he was the oldest prisoner of France. Once again, the church came to his help. After he was released from prison, he was welcomed in a monastery in Brittany, where he stayed there until he died on April 21, 2010, at 90 years of age. Now we go to story number 3. Family slaughtered at Wellsgrave Provincial Park. The killer stalked the family while he let his violent fantasies run wild. 3 generations of a family left to go camping on August 2, 1982. They set up camp in the Wellsgrave Provincial Park, located roughly 120 kilometers north of Kamloops in central British Columbia. They enjoyed several days of quality family time, picking berries during the day and gathering around the fire at night, having no idea that they were being stalked by a killer. Among the campers was grandparents Edith, 59, and George Bentley, aged 66, their daughter Jackie, 41, and son-in-law Bob Johnson, 44. Also the Johnsons' daughters Janet, 13, and Karen, just 11. The Johnsons drove up with their daughters and pitched a tent for the girls. The grandparents brought a truck and camper where the adults would stay. The last anyone heard from the family was on August 6th, when Edith called another daughter. It would not be until August 23rd that the family would first be reported missing. Bob Johnson was due back at work on August 16th, but didn't show. After a week with no word from him, his company filed a missing persons case with the police. In spite of an extensive search, it didn't result in finding any of the family members. The biggest problems were the killer had a head start. With plenty of time to kill, get rid of the victims' bodies, and cover his tracks. The other, maybe even bigger obstacle was, no one knew exactly where the family was camping at. All anyone knew was that the family was camping in the Wellsgrave area, which is massive. They had no idea where to even start, let alone being able to follow a trail to find the family. It would take 3 more weeks and a mushroom picker to find the family. On September 13th, the current discovery of the Johnsons' 1979 Plymouth was found. It had been burned beyond recognition as it set off to the side of a mountainside logging road. The car held the bodies of the 4 adults in the back seat and the 2 young girls in the trunk. The bodies were burnt so thoroughly that when it came time to bury the family, they were all placed together in one child-sized casket. Through a forensic examination of the remains, it was determined they had been shot with a .22 caliber firearm. Locals were able to tell investigators where they had seen the family camped at. An examination of the area would turn up .22 casings, which helped identify the weapon used as a Remington pump-action rifle. What wasn't at the campsite was the truck and camper, the boat, and camping gear brought with the family, or any trace of the family at all. With no suspect in custody or even in sight, the media was pushing for answers. A tip came in that the family's truck and camper had been spotted. The witnesses said it was being driven by 2 French Canadians in central Canada. The media sprang into action, throwing this up as their headline and demanding the killers to be caught. In April, with still no leads, the investigators knew they needed to get creative. They reenacted what they believed was the crime scene for TV cameras and aired it across Canada. The next month, the police drove a replica Ford camper truck to Ontario and Quebec in an attempt to draw awareness for what people should be looking out for. What it did instead was flood the investigators with over 13,000 tips and sightings of the replica vehicle. The reward was raised from $7,500 to $10,000 for information leading to the truck. None of the tips led to the discovery of the camper and truck. It would be found by sheer luck. 2 forestry employees were working on a logging road and stumbled across it. The camper had sat there on Trophy Mountain for 14 months, only a few kilometers away from the crime scene. The camper was burned out like the car holding the family's bodies. This left the authorities to believe they were looking for someone local to the Wells Gray area, and not 2 French Canadians as they had been searching for, since it was more likely that a local would know about the logging roads and the area in general. Taking a closer look at the person who lived closest to the crime scene led them back to David William Shearing, 24. They had received a tip about him earlier in the investigation. When they followed up, the tipster had quite a bit to tell them. I hear earlier Shearing had asked him about re-registering a Ford truck and how to repair a hole in its door. This was a tip that the police had never divulged. After finding the truck, it had a bullet hole in the door. After an interrogation by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Shearing confessed. He went so far as reenacting the murders for the detectives. He turned over evidence that he had stolen from the family and the murder weapon, the .22 caliber Remington rifle. The ballistic test would prove that this was the weapon used to kill the family. The same weapon that had been hanging at his wall the very first time the authorities went to ask him about the family, right after they had been reported missing. Maybe it was because his father was a prison guard or his brother was a sheriff. But Shearing wasn't suspected when first interviewed. In his confession, he gave details of how it all happened. He had first noticed the family when they set up camp, fixating on the 2 young girls. Then over the next few days, he watched their every move. On the night of August 10th, Shearing watched as the adults sat around the campfire and had seen the girls go into their tent for the night. From a distance, he took out the 4 adults with sniper shots. He said he then killed the 2 girls from their tent as they slept. After he said he loaded all the bodies into the car and moved it to the logging road, then set it on fire with 5 gallons of gasoline. He then cleaned up the campground, removing the family's possessions, including the camper and truck. It would only be later that he'd burned these as he was unable to transfer them into his name. He claimed that he killed the family because he wanted to rob him of their possessions. It wouldn't be until after Shearing was convicted that he gave his full confession of how he had been stalking the family. It was the girls that he fantasized about having sex with that kept him interested. That's why after killing the adults, he kidnapped the girls and took them to his property nearby. There he raped and terrorized them for over a week. On August 16th, the day their father was due back at work, Shearing took Taryn away from her big sister. Once alone, he shot the girl in the back of the head. Janet would be left alive for one more day of torture before she would be killed like her sister. With the girls now dead, he took their bodies to the Johnsons' car where the other family members had been placed. He had actually only hidden the car in some bush. He put the girls in the trunk and got into the driver's seat with the 4 decomposing adult bodies in the back seat. Driving it to its final resting place where it would be found by that mushroom picker burned out. David Shearing pled guilty to 6 counts of murder. Shearing was sentenced to life in prison with no eligibility for parole for 25 years. The maximum penalty for second-degree murder. This would be the first time that this sentence was handed out in Canadian history. David Shearing, who changed his last name to his mother's maiden name of Ennis, was first eligible for parole in 2008. The National Parole Board ruled against his release, citing that he was still having violent sexual fantasies and had not completed a sex offender treatment program, so he was not ready to be released. Again, in 2012, he was turned down for parole. Applying again in 2014, but before his hearing, he withdrew his request. The National Parole Board has also been given a petition which has over 15,000 signatures, advocating for the violent offender to never be released. In his own words at one of his parole hearings, David tries to plea for freedom, saying this about himself: "I was very selfish." He is supported by his wife, that he married while in prison, Heather. British Sabrina Quieter had every chance of achieving the fabulous, rich, and carefree life she dreamed of from an early age, but it was never enough for her. No partner was good enough for her, and she constantly felt like she was born for fame, attention, and luxury. Her unrealized ambitions and obsessive fantasies eventually escalated into delusions with bouts of violence. Unfortunately, Sabrina found a defenseless man on whom she vented all her anger. This case became one of the most heinous and high-profile in British history. An innocent girl who cared for her children became the victim of a deranged sadist. Sabrina Quieter. Early years. Sabrina Quieter, born on December 5, 1982, in a London suburb, had a distinctive blend of French and Algerian heritage from her parents. This unique mix likely contributed to her striking appearance and fiery temperament. The eldest of 4 children, Sabrina was the darling of her family, constantly praised and set as a model for others. At the age of 2, her family emigrated to France, settling in Paris, where she spent most of her childhood and youth. Sabrina's complex character began to manifest in her school years. Her former classmates later recalled that she was arrogant, domineering, self-absorbed, and extremely selfish. She had few friends, either at school or among her neighborhood peers, considering everyone around her unworthy of her time. To other bright, outgoing girls, she was particularly hostile, viewing them as competitors and enemies. With her stunning looks, a striking brunette with brown eyes and an impressive figure, Sabrina could have pursued a career in modeling if she had the ability to connect with others, rather than just seeking to manipulate them. As a child, she was active in sports and showed some interest in music during her youth, but her inconsistency, impatience for quick results, and lack of effort hindered her success in any field. Years later, Sabrina claimed she experienced harsh treatment from her maternal relatives in France during her early years. However, these claims were never substantiated or proven. Contrarily, her family insisted that she was indulged and always sought attention. As a teenager, while active in sports, Sabrina suffered a back injury, leading to a dependence on prescription painkillers. She tried to obtain these drugs illegally, leading to her arrest and a police warning. Sabrina was always intensely focused on herself and her appearance, craving constant attention. She had no doubt that her future held a wealthy, glamorous life filled with celebrity interactions and her own stardom. Sometimes it seemed her fantasies clouded her reality, as she believed her rightful place was in Hollywood. Sabrina graduated from the Sorbonne with a degree in English and French literature. However, since 2006, she claimed various fashion industry professions such as stylist, makeup artist, fashion designer, or designer, though she lacked real expertise in these areas. Complex relationship with Wissem Madouni. Sabrina Queeter, known for her stunning looks, had a penchant for captivating men and exploiting their affection, but she never saw any of her suitors as worthy of a serious relationship. She was literally waiting for a prince who would completely obey her. After finishing school, Sabrina was still unclear about her life goals, feeling entitled to everything without effort. Nevertheless, she enrolled at the prestigious Sorbonne University and simultaneously worked at a sweet shop for financial support. It was there, at the age of 18, that she met Wissem Medouni. Medouni, 6 years her senior, was a manager at a major French company's head office and studied at one of Paris's most prestigious universities. He aspired to a master's degree for career advancement. Despite not being particularly handsome, part of elite clubs, or in the celebrity circle, he fell deeply in love with Sabrina and was willing to fulfill all her whims and fancies. Sabrina, too, found Medouni appealing, seeing him as someone she could manipulate yet also as a ticket to a wealthy life. He was ambitious and capable of great career success and was ready to pamper and spoil her. The couple began dating in 2000 and within a few months decided to move in together. Sabrina quickly revealed her true nature, striving to control Medouni in every aspect. If her demands were not met, she resorted to tantrums, manipulations, and even physical violence. Moreover, she soon started openly cheating on Medouni, not bothering to hide it or justify her actions. She could engage in flings with anyone, from a random acquaintance to Medouni's best friend or colleague. Despite several attempts to end the relationship and leaving her, Medouni always returned, unable to break free from his deep love for Sabrina. In 2001, Medouni achieved his master's degree and a significant promotion. He began earning a substantial income, which he spent lavishly on Sabrina's luxurious clothing and entertainment. His family owned several properties in Paris, and he managed them, giving all the rental income to Sabrina. Medouni, who also had Franco-Algerian roots, saw a kindred spirit in Sabrina. According to some reports, in the fall of 2001, the couple married in a special Muslim ceremony, evidenced by a certificate issued by the Argenteuil Mosque. However, this religious ceremony was insufficient to make the union official and legal. The couple had a son, whose paternity Medouni officially recognized. However, years later, a Frenchman named Anthony Francois claimed he was the child's father. Francois, a witness in Queeter's trial, described her as volatile, unpredictable, promiscuous, and manipulative. Relocation to London. In 2008, the global financial crisis hit hard, leading to the bankruptcy of the company where Wissem Medouni worked, resulting in the loss of his high-paying job. It was around this time that Sabrina Queeter developed a fixation on moving to London. She made the move without much consultation with her partner. Left with little choice and hoping for a new career start in one of the world's major financial hubs, Medouni followed her to London. Once in London, Medouni found employment in a major English bank. However, Sabrina struggled to find her footing in the fashion industry. Her aspirations to become a designer, model, or makeup artist were hindered by a lack of skills, experience, and formal education in these fields. Consequently, she had to lower her expectations. Over time, she worked in various capacities, including as a nanny, in a call center, a cafe, and even tried her hand at network marketing. Romance with Mark Walton. Sabrina Queeter's quest for love took a turn when she rekindled her teenage passion for music, adding the titles of musician and composer to her resume. Despite her enthusiasm, Sabrina struggled to find professional opportunities in the music industry. She attended numerous auditions and social events, hoping to make valuable connections. At one of these events, Sabrina fortuitously met Mark Walton, a renowned musician, songwriter, and one of the founding members of the famous Irish boy band, Boyzone. After leaving the group, Mark became a successful producer and music mogul, collaborating with artists like Jennifer Lopez, Jessica Simpson, and Lady Gaga. By 2016, his net worth had exceeded $1 billion. Mark was precisely the kind of person Sabrina had dreamt of meeting, her ticket to a world of fame and luxury. She managed to impress Mark with her beauty and charisma. He was captivated by her and openly admitted falling in love at first sight. unable to think of anyone but the stunning woman. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and Sabrina made efforts to remain pleasant and endearing, quickly ending her relationship with Meduni as she saw a promising future with Mark. His previous relationship and child were no deterrent for her. Within weeks, the lovers moved in together, residing in a luxurious house in an upscale area of London. Mark took on all the expenses, including the rent for the lavish house chosen by Sabrina. For several months, Sabrina lived the opulent life she had long aspired to, socializing with celebrities, attending elite events, wearing couture clothing, and even appearing in glossy magazines. However, managing Mark proved challenging for Sabrina, as she feared losing him. She couldn't control her nature for long and soon began to show jealousy towards every woman around Mark. Sabrina's demands increased over time, seeking more gifts and luxury. Mark indulged her with designer clothes, jewelry, and outings to high-end restaurants and clubs, but it was never enough for her. The couple's home had a high turnover of staff and nannies, as Sabrina's paranoia led her to believe they were either stealing or attempting to seduce Mark. Her irrational behavior eventually drove Mark to his breaking point. In 2011, he ended the relationship and left for California, leaving Sabrina with nothing. Losing Mark also meant losing the lavish lifestyle she had enjoyed. Sabrina started giving interviews, accusing Mark of cruelty, violence, and substance abuse. She called him, crying, begging him to return, and even threatened to take her own life. But none of these tactics brought him back. Who is the father of the second child? After realizing she had lost Mark Walton, Sabrina Kuiter reached out to her ex-partner, Wissam Meduni. Meduni, whose career was flourishing as a bank executive, immediately forgave and accepted her back, still harboring feelings for her. They resumed living together. Shortly after reuniting with Meduni, Sabrina discovered she was pregnant. She quickly informed Walton, who, through his lawyers, expressed willingness to provide for the child and Sabrina, offering a monthly allowance. However, Walton insisted on a paternity test post-delivery to confirm his fatherhood. Sabrina's refusal to undergo the test, which could have secured her substantial regular payments, hinted at her uncertainty about the child's paternity. Instead of agreeing to the test, she demanded Walton double the proposed allowance. Upon his refusal, she declared war on the musician. Sabrina took to social media, spreading false claims that Walton was obsessed with her, insanely jealous of Meduni, and was physically threatening them. She accused Walton of breaking into their home, assaulting Meduni, scaring the children, and sexually assaulting her in unnatural ways. However, she couldn't substantiate her claims as Walton had a solid alibi, being in the United States since their breakup. After Walton filed a defamation lawsuit and the police threatened action against her, Sabrina temporarily ceased her accusations against the ex-boyfriend. She settled in Wimbledon, southwest London, with Meduni and their 2 children, leading a seemingly quiet life as the conflict appeared to be resolved. French nanny Sabrina Kuiter, unaccustomed to managing household chores and finding it challenging to handle 2 children, decided to hire a nanny who could also assist with housework. She posted a job advertisement online and personally conducted interviews. Most candidates did not meet her expectations, and those who did not stay long in her household. A young French woman named Sophie Lyonnais responded to the advertisement. At the time, 19-year-old Sophie was in her provincial hometown in France, so the interview was conducted via video call. This modest, unassuming provincial agreed to all terms: childcare, household help, and cooking for a symbolic weekly pay of 50 British pounds, including full board and lodging with the employer. Sophie was born on January 7, 1996, in the small town of Troyes, situated between Auxerre and Sens. Her parents, Catherine and Patrick Lyonnais, were simple workers, leading a modest, if not poor, lifestyle. After finishing school, Sophie obtained a diploma in childcare but did not wish to work in her province, aspiring instead to move to a big city. Known for being shy, quiet, and plain in appearance, but very kind and open-hearted, Sophie was loved by those who knew her. Due to poor vision, she wore glasses, which she was somewhat self-conscious about. During their conversation, Kuiter realized that Sophie, the plain Jane, would be an ideal target for her manipulations. Moreover, Sophie was eager to gain experience and good references, thus willing to work for minimal wages. To Sophie, Sabrina seemed like a serious and reliable employer, a fact she shared with her parents before departing for London. As kind employers turned into sophisticated sadists. Initially, things seemed to go well for Sophie Leonette, who naively believed that working for the Queeters would be an excellent start to her nanny career. She quickly bonded with the children, managed household chores as per her contract, and had enough time and resources to improve her English and explore city attractions. This peaceful period lasted several months and all seemed well. Problems began when Maduni lost his job, and the family's only stable income became the monthly child support payments from Walton. Sabrina again demanded increased payments from Walton, who in turn requested a DNA test to confirm his paternity. The family faced serious financial issues, struggling with expensive rent and basic living expenses. Sabrina, unwilling to cut back on her luxuries and desperate to maintain her socialite lifestyle, became irritable and aggressive, often taking out her anger on the young nanny. The couple attempted to start a bakery business with their last funds, but it failed. Sabrina then turned to Walton, asking for a substantial amount of money to launch her clothing line, only to be met with a categorical refusal, leading to tears and complaints about poverty. Sabrina frequently complained to Lionette about her ex-lover, and the nanny tried to console her employer. What happened next varies depending on the source. According to one version, Queeter conceived a plan to use Sophie as a weapon for blackmailing Walton. She intended to portray Sophie as Walton's accomplice and lover, supposedly planted in their home to disrupt their lives and endanger the children. Sabrina claimed that the provincial fool was in love with Walton, who used her as a tool for revenge. She believed that recording the nanny's confessions on tape or video and presenting them to the police would be sufficient evidence to demand compensation from Walton for his heinous act. However, Sophie refused to give false statements on camera. Another version, as argued by Queeter's lawyers in court, suggested that due to her mental disorder, Sabrina genuinely believed in her conspiracy theory and saw Sophie as an enemy and a threat to her family. She allegedly didn't force the nanny to give false testimony, but truly believed Sophie was Walton's accomplice, infiltrated into their household to harm them. Regardless of the truth, Sophie's life soon turned into a living nightmare. Torture chamber in the basement of a wealthy home. Initially, young Frenchwoman Sophie Leonette was burdened with extra work without a corresponding increase in her meager salary. Eventually, she was engaged in endless chores from dawn till late night, with no personal time and effectively imprisoned within the house walls. Sophie's pay was soon halted entirely, and to prevent her escape or return to France, her employers confiscated her passport, making her a captive. Her communication with family was strictly monitored. The situation worsened. Sophie was barely fed and constantly pressured to give false statements against Walton, whom she had never met or known. She was communicated with solely through screams, insults, and threats. Accused of stealing money and valuables, she was threatened with imprisonment if she failed to comply with their demands against the musician. When screaming and blackmail proved ineffective, the Queeters resorted to more brutal and sophisticated methods. Sophie was effectively relocated to a cold basement, where she spent all her time when not working. Fed scantily once or twice a day, she became emaciated and weak. However, the cold and hunger were not the worst she endured. Physical abuse became the most torturous stage. It started with slaps and hair pulling, but escalated when Sabrina broke Sophie's nose in a violent assault. The sight of blood seemingly unleashed Sabrina's fury, turning beatings into a daily ordeal for Sophie. Each day brought new methods of cruelty designed to inflict unbearable pain and suffering. The basement of this wealthy house in an affluent London area turned into a real torture chamber for Lionette, with no hope of rescue. Strange visit to the police station. In late summer 2017, Sabrina Queeter brought the unfortunate Sophie Lionette to a police station, claiming that Sophie was ready to testify against Mark Walton, with whom she allegedly had a romantic and criminal relationship, and who had supposedly sent her to their house to abuse the children. However, Sophie remained silent, refusing to say what Sabrina demanded. The police decided to speak with Sophie privately and took her to a separate room. Sabrina was furious, fearing that Sophie would reveal the horrors happening at their home and implicate her and her husband. Mysteriously, Sophie chose not to disclose anything or seek help. The police's response was also peculiar. Despite seeing a malnourished, frightened, and weakened young woman, they did not call a doctor or a psychologist to ensure her well-being and safety. At that point, the 21-year-old Manny weighed less than 40 kilograms, had partially lost her hair, was missing a front tooth, and was noticeably limping. Yet none of this raised any concern with the officers, who simply let everyone go home. Disturbing phone call and a funeral pyre. In mid-September, Sophie Leonet made her final call to her mother. Sobbing, Sophie confessed to her mother that she wanted to return home but had no money. Catherine, without delving into details, simply told her daughter that she would buy her a ticket and ask her to pack her bags immediately. This was the last time she would hear Sophie's voice. A few days later, on September 20th, 2017, in the evening, the Queeters' neighbors called the police. They were alarmed by a fire in the yard, not so much by the fire itself, but by the nauseating, sweetly greasy smell emanating from it. A neighbor said he immediately realized it smelled like burning flesh and hair, along with something unidentifiable. And the thick smoke that stretched half a block instantly impregnated clothes and skin with this stench. Firefighters and a police car arrived at the scene. The house owners, appearing calm and seemingly unaware of the reason for the emergency services visit, met them. After extinguishing the fire, what looked like a charred human hand was discovered in the ashes. The couple was immediately taken into custody, and severely burnt human remains were extracted from the fire. The gender and age of the deceased were indeterminable, but soon the body was identified as Sophie Leonet's, recognized by the melted metal frame of the glasses embedded in the skull, which Sophie always wore. Cause of death. Determining the cause of Sophie Leonet's death was challenging, as her body was almost entirely destroyed by fire. Forensic experts found multiple rib fractures, jaw cracks, and evidence of blunt force trauma on her skull and limbs, indicating she had suffered these injuries while still alive. Additionally, several of her teeth were missing, and her nose was severely damaged. It became clear that Sophie had endured prolonged and brutal beatings, resulting in broken bones and knocked-out teeth. However, assessing the state of her internal organs and identifying any penetrating wounds was impossible due to the extent of the fire damage. The discovery of horrific video recordings in the house, showing Sophie being tortured and coerced into confessing collusion with Walton and intent to harm the children, revealed the true sadistic nature of her captors. Sophie was beaten with fists, an iron cord, a golf club, and even subjected to electric shock torture. She also endured humiliations, such as being forced to submerge her head in a toilet until she began to suffocate. According to experts, Sophie likely died from asphyxiation before being burned on the pyre, sparing her from the agony of being alive during the burning. Trial and sentence. Sabrina Queeter and Wissem Medouni denied guilt and displayed no remorse for their brutal crime. After the murder, Medouni calmly went to a nearby supermarket to buy firelighter fluid for burning the body and dinner for his family, behaving as if nothing unusual had happened. The first court hearings against the sadistic couple began in March 2018. Sabrina tried to portray herself as a victim, blaming Mark Walton for driving her to a pathological state with his relentless torment. Medical examinations confirmed Sabrina had mental disorders but was not insane and could comprehend her actions. Wissem, physically healthy, was psychologically dependent on Sabrina, dominated and blindly obedient to her. A former lover of Sabrina, testifying in court, described her as a cunning manipulator, not a madwoman, as she calculated her moves too shrewdly. Another witness stated she always fabricated enemies, but did so rationally, with selfish motives. On June 26, 2018, the court found the couple guilty of torturing, humiliating, and murdering their nanny under aggravating circumstances. They were sentenced to life imprisonment, eligible for parole only after 30 years. Neither admitted guilt, continuously appealing to mitigate their sentences. Sabrina attempted to feign insanity, hoping to move from prison to a hospital, but was unsuccessful. Mark Walton, present at the trial, expressed guilt over his ex-lover's actions, as she committed these atrocities to gain his attention and financial compensation. He offered his deepest condolences to the victim's parents and voluntarily issued a substantial check to support the grief-stricken family who lost their beloved daughter.